Mix 104.1 New England Lifestyles. It is always nice when you get a chance to reconnect with an old friend. And Ken Capobianco is on the line right now. Ken is a freelance writer for the Boston Globe, but he's been around for years. He actually did the first profile of me, Mike Mullaney, the radio guy, in any newspaper ever. Ken is joining me on the line right now. Ken, it's good to talk again.
Yeah, it's good to be here, Mike. Thanks for having me.
I hope you realize that after you wrote that story about me, my mom had it framed and it hung in our living room for many years. It's still the only article anyone ever cared to write about me, but I'm only kidding. But look, it was very nice. You were a writer back then for Tab newspapers. You've written for a lot of different places. You're a music critic. But now you've written a book, which is the basic reason that we're talking today, because it's an important book. It is called Me Anorexic, The Ballad of a Thin Man. And it's a novel, but it kind of mirrors a little bit about your struggle. So tell us a little bit about the book.
Yes. Well, basically, I wrote the book to be a fictionalized account of my early years with my struggle with anorexia. I fought anorexia for 30 years. I started when I was 19, and it got severe, very severe, and I struggled till I was 49 years old. And so I wanted to create a fictional account of my 20s, when it really got bad, in the mid-20s, when my life kind of spiraled out of control. And I wanted to try to make the anorexic experience palpable to readers, and but also tell a universal story. I wanted to tell a bigger story about family and about all the things that we try to deal with in life. And it was really a very, very difficult thing for me to write, but I found that it came to a point where I understood that this would really ultimately help people, and it was important for me to write.
And by the way, as we talk about this today, you can get the book. Probably the easiest way is on Amazon. I'm on Amazon now, and I'm reading that.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Amazon.com, yeah.
And I like the fact that you have both the paperback, but if you buy it on Kindle, it's pretty cheap, so nicely done.
Yes, it is. It's only $4.99. So
I like that. So, this is the thing about anorexia. Anorexia has kind of become a joke in pop culture society. Everyone's like, my wife and my daughter, for example. My wife is, when I met her and married her, she was, 5 feet tall and weighed 85 pounds. And she used to say that people would always call her anorexic, and she would consider it a compliment back in the day and say, oh, just because, my daughter now is also very, very thin. She's a vegetarian. She's probably got about a 1% body fat. And she says that people constantly harass her about being anorexic. And it kind of reminded me that it's not like some joke when you see someone. And I know that you, as a guy who lived with it, has a better perspective on how big of a challenge that is. It's no joke.
Well, to be honest with you, we know it's not a joke because it is it has the highest of all the disorders, mental disorders. It has the highest mortality rate.
Wow.
And so it's not a joke. But I will tell you that when I was going through it, obviously I was a male, and most people thought, okay, they would joke about it. I remember when I was teaching at Northeastern University. And I mentioned to one of the teachers, and this was a very educated man, and he said, boy, I need to get some of that anorexia, and it to me, it was kind of, okay, that's not exactly, you really don't really want to wish what I'm going through on you. But it has become like a joke, and for a lot of people, young women especially, they're competing now to be as skinny as possible.
Yeah, social media, that's the big thing. It's like, I got to take the skinniest possible photo of myself. I would imagine it's like, you heard a lot about anorexia and stuff, or back in the day when it was first, became an acknowledged disorder, but it seems like now it's subtly snuck back in, kind of the same way that, smoking was gone out, but all of a sudden vaping has made it an epidemic. It's like these illnesses, these challenges that come around suddenly have a resurgence, and social media has kind of brought this back up to the forefront.
I think social media is a very big problem in terms of having young people, whether it's men or women, but really for young girls especially, who always are dealing with looking at other pictures of how they're looking for thigh gap, and they're looking for who's
Isn't that
got the
funny?
skinniest waist.
Thigh gap has become the thing. And
Exactly.
it's
Exactly.
like, what do you, that is not a natural thing.
Right. And so they're and I am on Instagram, and I see a lot of young women who are they hashtag Thinspo and hashtag anorexia, and they're actually trying to be as skinny as possible. And there is obviously there's a supportive group, but there's also a lot of young women really competing against each other to be as skinny, and it's very, very dangerous for me to see this. I try, many of the girls, I try to even comment on it and say, when they say, I just want to die if I don't lose weight, and I try to comment and say, please don't, you don't realize what you're saying. You have a full life to live.
Yeah.
And they don't want to hear you. Obviously I'm the old guy who doesn't understand what they're going through. And of course I do. But I mean, for me, I tried to be as skinny as possible. I was determined to lose as much weight as possible. And obviously it almost killed me many times.
Well, again, if you're just tuning in to Mix 104.1, I'm Mike Mullaney. We're talking to Ken Capobianco, who's the author of a new novel called The Ballad of the Thin Man, which is a novelized form of some of the things that he's dealt with in his life, dealing with anorexia for 30 years. Ken, when people talk about anorexia, they have this idea, but when it really comes down to how it manifests itself in your day-to-day life, tell us really what we're talking about. Because, again, you talk about it, but what is it actually like?
It's you're trying to control. I mean, you're trying to control your life, and the only way you feel out of control. For me, there were a lot of different things going on in my life that I felt out of control, and the one thing I could control was my food intake. And I did not eat all day at all. I never ate. I woke up. I did not eat. I spent the entire day. I used to glow. Obviously, I was a music critic.
Yeah.
So I would go out to the clubs at night, and I would not have an ounce of food in me. I would just drink Diet Coke, and then I would come home at 2 a.m. after the shows, and then I would eat maybe 5 Oreos or something, and a glass of milk, and go to sleep and start it all over again. Start the cycle all over again, and but really what it is you feel like the world is just out of your grasp, and every person has their own narrative. Every person has their own story. So there's no like connecting thread, or the connecting thread is control, but every individual has to look at their own life and unravel their own problems while they're in therapy or wherever, and try to figure out what is it that you're trying to control in your life, and what are the problems in your life, and that's the real key thing.
It's fascinating that you talk about how every person has their own battle with it and how it manifests itself in everyone's head. So many young people are just looking at it, and they're really doing it from a vanity perspective. You talk about how you wanted to control something in your life. Did you want to be as thin as could be, or did you just want to have some control? I mean, how did the way it came with you?
It's a combination. I mean, I wanted to have control, but the thing is, while I was losing weight, I found that was a way for me to achieve a certain kind of perfection. I wanted to be. Franz Kafka has a story called The Hunger Artist, in which it's a great story, and everybody should read it. That's concerned with anorexia. It's a great story, but it was about a man who tries to achieve perfection in being thin, and that's what I was trying to do. I thought there was some kind of nobility, some kind of beauty in being thin. And it was a dangerous thing for me. But really, all the things in my life, I was in a relationship I didn't want to be in. I had got my master's degree at 23, and I didn't get the job I wanted. My life just wasn't going where I wanted to be, and I felt like a lot of my life was falling apart, and I didn't know how to get control of that other than really it was the easiest form for me. Instead of really doing other things, I just shut down. I just said, I don't want to deal with anything. Let me just not eat. Maybe I'll just disappear.
What were the physical, long-term physical impacts of your approach to
Oh my God,
eating?
it took a tremendous toll. I mean, I started when I was 19. I was running 10 miles a day, and I ran.
That's a lot of running.
That's a lot of running. That's a lot of running. I never took a day off. Exercise was a very, very important thing. And as the years slowly went on, I was eating less, and I couldn't run, but I continued to run. The body is very resilient to 21, 22,
Yeah,
23,
sure is.
24. And I continued to run even though I wasn't putting any fuel in my body. But I started to get aches and pains, and I was very, very lucky because I was maybe I was in the 95 pounds, and I was still running, and
Wow.
of course I could have had a heart attack. But I was quite lucky, and I wasn't seeing doctors because I was afraid if I saw the doctors, they would put me in a program or something like that. So I played a very dangerous game, but it took a very, very, very big toll on my body as the years went by.
How did you end up? I mean, the only way to get out of this is through a lot of therapy. And over the
Yes.
course of your 30 years, how were you able to come to grips with what you were doing?
To be honest with you, to me, it was accumulation because I got out of therapy, and I will say this: I moved out of Boston, and I moved to Los Angeles. I moved to Long Beach, where I live now, and that was a very important move. Now, I do not believe that a change of location always changes the change of mindset, but Boston. There's a point in the book that's very, very accurate in which I talk about. It's a novel, but Boston was a place I identified with my illness. It was a place that I just kept repeating my pattern, and I really needed to change my environment. And so, but all the therapy that I went through started to kick in. Everything I resisted. I was 30 years is a long time,
Yeah.
and you just have to yield. You have to say either I'm going to stay on this path and I'm going to die, or I'm going to change. And I started making, when I got out here in California, I started making connections, real connections. I had a lot of friends in Boston, but I really didn't have real personal connections because I kept people out of my life.
Right, right.
And I met, the other thing was I met some women who were like, okay, Ken, I cannot do this. You either are going to eat, or you're going to have this, you're ever going to have a relationship, or you're not going to eat. And which one do you want to choose? And I'd failed so many times in relationships by choosing not to eat. And I had to say to myself, hey, I'm getting older. What am I going to do? Is this the kind of life I want to live? And I had to make a choice.
It's interesting that a woman kind of made you ask that question. Same thing with me. 26 years ago, my current wife said to me, look, dude, you're either going to keep drinking or you and I are going to have a relationship, but both ain't going to happen. What do you want to do? And at that point, you really have to ask yourself, which one of these things is more important? And I was thrilled that I took the turn I did, and I'm glad you took the turn you did as well. Now, is this something you still deal with day to day?
I do. I mean, the thing is, I eat. My wife is a chef.
Yeah, congratulations, by the way. I never get a chance to congratulate you.
Excuse me?
I said I never get a chance to congratulate you on the marriage.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you very much. Yes, that's the ultimate irony. When I met her, she said I owned a restaurant. I am a chef. Please come in. And I was like, okay. All right, here we go. She doesn't know my history, so we'll see how this goes. And but what happened is I eat normally now. I mean, I eat, but I still look in mirrors. I still, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I weigh 50 pounds more than I used to. I weigh about 145 pounds now, but I used to weigh like 95 pounds. Yeah. So I weigh 145 pounds. But I still look in mirrors, and let's say I'll eat something and I'm fine with it. But if somebody says, "Hey, right after you do you want a dessert?" My answer is no. I probably won't eat dessert. No, I know what I want to eat, and I have a good understanding of what I need to eat, and I don't sit around and watch a football game on Sunday and eat chips all day. Never. That'll never happen.
But you still watch your Green Bay Packers because I know you're Packers for life.
I love the Green Bay Packers. That's right. And when I watch Aaron Rodgers get hurt or something like that, like last year, I have an urge to. Who knows? I have an urge to break things, but I don't have an urge to do anything ridiculous with food or anything like that. I'm not, because the thing is, anxiety for people triggers bad eating habits.
Yeah, it does. I mean, how many people say, I didn't get the job. Luckily, Baskin-Robbins makes ice cream in the pint. And I'm like, seriously? That's the approach? But I mean, think about how many people, so many people use food as reward, as weapon, as comfort, as pain. I mean, it's like, that's the one thing. If you want to give up drinking, you just don't have to drink, but you still have to eat to survive.
That is correct.
I mean, what a difference there.
And the one thing is about, when you stop eating like I did, every day becomes a perilous task. I mean, because you're not sure if you're going to make it through that day. I mean, you're really not. For me, I remember in the later years when I was very skinny, and it became very dangerous. I used to. There's a chapter in the book where Michael talks about, and this is very real. About going up the stairs in his apartment, and he's not sure whether or not he's actually going to make it up the stairs, and he's thinking to himself, "This might be my last moment," and that's very true. That's how I felt.
And that's amazing stuff. Now, how many is this the first? How many books have you done?
This is my first novel.
Look at you.
I mean, obviously, I've been writing. I've been writing about music for 30 years.
Oh, you have indeed.
I've also written about film, and I wrote a humor column in Boston. So I was always, but I think I was always procrastinating and trying to put off. I wanted to write this book, but I knew I would have to relive a lot of memories. For me to write this book, I needed distance from it. I could never write it while I was ill. I needed to be healthy in order to write this book, but not that this is going to be the only book I write, because the next book I want to write, I want to go back to being and there's a lot of funny stuff in this. There really is a lot of funny stuff in this book. It's a lot about music. A lot of it takes place in Boston and Avalon and the Middle East and other clubs.
All the haunts we've all spent time in, right?
So I wanted to make it inclusive. There's a lot of scenes. There's a couple of chapters in Fenway Park.
Nice.
I'm a huge baseball fan, so I wanted to make it about his life. He's a huge baseball fan. And the narrator's a huge baseball fan, and what he sees. He loves Darryl Strawberry and Cookie Lavagetto. He sees every character. Every baseball character has a food name. He sees everything in food.
That's pretty good. Well, Well, again, it's great to see that you got this thing out there. And again, Ken Capobianco, a longtime music critic. By the way, I loved your article you wrote about Graham Parker the other day. Always nice to see you. And that is in the Boston Globe. If you didn't see it, go back and check that out. Yep. But again, this book on Amazon now, Call Me Anorexic, The Ballad of a Thin Man, novel by Ken, the guy who walked the walk and wrote a novel, not so much about his experience, but it certainly sounds like a guy you might have known back in the day, huh?
It was absolutely. It's a fictionalized version of what I experienced, but in the book, his brother is a world famous novelist and music critic, and
Ah,
what I try to do is it's the two brothers are kind of like my two sides of myself.
I like that.
There's a brother dynamic in the book, it's the anorexic and also the music critic who's very very opinionated, very loud, and it is. But I couldn't tell my story because my story would be very repetitious and very harrowing. I mean,
Yeah.
supremely harrowing because all I did was basically starve and go to clubs.
Well, again, I love the opinionated side of you. That's one of you. You're one of my favorite. Every time you post a review, anything, I love the way you approach things. You are such an
Yeah.
excellent wraiter. Where can people follow you, by the way, on social media if they want to follow what
Yeah,
you do?
I'm on Twitter. I'm Ken Capo 45. Instagram is call underscore me underscore anorexic. And I'm on Facebook, and I also, I can just people just can read my stuff online. They have all my everything I've written is pretty much online.
Very good. One of my favorite authors, Ken Capobianco. Congrats on the book, The Ballad of the Thin Man, a novel by Ken Capobianco. And again, this whole idea of anorexia, people should really open their eyes. It keeps hiding itself as something cool. In reality, it's killing people, and
It is.
I'm
It
glad
is.
you're getting the word out.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but
No.
it's a very. I think people need to take it very, very seriously. It's no joke. Trust me.
Kenny, thank you so much. I appreciate you spending the time, and congrats on the book.
Thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate it.